Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, how the Phils have become killers of the bullpen and why they haven't been hitting starters.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons. And this is my 4th season as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. We're over 4,000 subscribers now on the YouTube. Thank you so much to everyone who's done that. Those are a bunch of people getting notifications when new episodes are posted so they don't miss any information. It's free, it's easy, and it also really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. So I appreciate everyone who's followed along on Locked On Phillies as we get rolling deeper into our 4th season with me as the host. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go ahead and check out our friends over at FanDuel. The Phils went out and they won the home opener yesterday. It was a great win from the 7th inning on. We're going to talk about the whole idea of bullpen pitching versus starting pitching from a hitting perspective, that is, because the Phillies have crushed bullpens and they haven't hit starters. So I'm going to tell you my thoughts on whether or not that's a problem. Also, I think we've seen a bit of a change in Rob Thomson that maybe he's not getting enough credit for. Maybe he should have always gotten more credit for. He's a very interesting character in the Philadelphia Phillies saga of this era. So we'll talk about some things he did yesterday in the home opener that were different than he normally would. And we're going to take an early peek at the National League East because some big NL East news came down yesterday. And the standings, they look pretty good for your fighting Phils. But let's start with this look at the Philadelphia Phillies against bullpens because they haven't done much against starters. And that should be surprising to some people because they haven't exactly faced Cy Young candidates so far to start the year. Obviously, on opening day, you see Mackenzie Gore. He was really, really good. And he had a bunch of strikeouts, and there were a bunch of shadows. And then game 2, there were a bunch of shadows as well. And you didn't do too well against Jake Irvin, who was the starter for Washington. The final game of the series down there in Washington was just not great all around because Aaron Nola got touched up and the Phillies hitters didn't really create anything off the starters either. Mitchell Parker seemed very, very comfortable. He did give up 7 hits, but no runs allowed for Parker. And then yesterday, German Marquez was very, very good for the Colorado Rockies. It's funny. The Philadelphia Phillies have scored, and let me just double check my math on this. It's 6, 7, 18 plus 7 would be 25 runs. And I think only 2 of them are off of starting pitching. That means they've scored 2 runs off starters and 23 off the bullpen. And yesterday was no different. They get to the Rockies bullpen, and in the 7th, they score 4. In the 8th, they scored 2. They ended up winning a game. They went into the bottom of the 7th down 1-0, 6-1. And there were some great at-bats in there, right? Let's just give love for yesterday's game before we get into this deeper bullpen discussion. Max Kepler and Nick Castellanos going back-to-back. Both nukes. Love to see it. They did a really great job. Kyle Schwarber hitting a ball off nearly the top of the batter's eye. He has had a red-hot start to the season. This is why Rob Thomson was doing both Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. Because let's just live in a crazy scenario, right? And this is more on the change for Rob Thomson that we're going to talk about coming up next. But let's live in a crazy scenario where you were in spring training and you said, what if Trey Turner got hurt? And we really like Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot. Should we probably still use him sometimes there to balance out Trey Turner and balance out Kyle Schwarber from the other side of the view? And when you look at a team that's aging and all in their early 30s, and injuries are a problem potentially for this team, and that's a valid concern heading into the season, shouldn't we have a backup plan? Because what if week 1, Trey Turner gets an issue with his back, and then you got to hit Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff spot? We're trying to win ball games. Because that's exactly what happened. That's why they tried both in spring training. That's why I've been telling you, take a deep breath about it. But Nobody listens. Whatever. Anyway, Kyle Schwarber's had a red hot start to the season, and he is looking awesome in any spot, cleanup, leadoff, whatever. That dude can just flat out hit. The Phillies need to give him an extension before he gets to free agency. Edmundo Sosa has been really, really good because he's been the guy actually filling in for Trey Turner because of course, Kyle Schwarber's not playing shortstop. He had a big 2 RBI double that started the scoring in the bottom of the 7th, and then people really, really woke up after that point. So Eddie was the one who really got things going. That was awesome to see. This team's just good. I've been telling you this team is good. And why are they not figuring out starting pitching? I think it's a weird combination of things that don't actually have to do with anything, right? That would be my argument as to why they're not figuring out starting pitching. One of the things is it's early in the season and your starters regret it. You look at what the Philadelphia Phillies starters have done outside of Nola. Wheeler has been he was dominant on opening day. You got Jesus Luzardo with 11 strikeouts in game 2. Nola was pretty damn good outside of one inning, which happened to be the RAV 4th inning on Sunday. And then yesterday, Christopher Sanchez, he didn't have his best stuff. He only had 7 strikeouts over 5 1/3 innings worth of work, but he only gave up 1 run, on a home run to Hunter Goodman. And the offense was just quieter. Christopher Sanchez would have had a simple, easy opening day win. He was pretty damn good yesterday, and he didn't even have his best stuff. I think he was a little bit juiced up for the home opener. Very excited for the opportunity, I'm sure. And then just got into a spot where he was pitching a little uncharacteristically. He also, remember, the weight of expectations for that guy is through the roof this year. So if he has a bit of a jitters to start the year, I get it. But he pitched fine. He did not get the win. Joe Ross actually got the win. But you look at it and you say, okay, well, starters have been stretched out. Teams are letting guys go longer than I expected them to. We've seen multiple pitchers get up into the mid-90s, not just for the Phillies, but guys that they faced. I figured earlier on in the season you'd be seeing 85, maybe 90 pitches thrown by these guys, and that's if things are going well. But things have just been going really well for starting pitchers, both against the Phillies and for the Phillies. So, one, you're pitching really good guys to start, and starting pitching is always ahead of hitting when the season begins, right? Because it takes time to adjust. The Phillies are doing that, but that's part of the reason I think they haven't scored against starters. It takes them a while to get in the groove over the course of the game. They will get better at that as the season goes on. 2 of the 4 games played so far were played under ridiculous shadows at Nationals Ballpark down there in D.C. That would be games 1 and 2 of the season, in which the Phillies didn't score much early and then scored a lot late once the shadows were gone. And then outside of that, German Marquez is a former National League Pitcher of the Month. Mackenzie Gore is a really good not prospect anymore, but really good young pitcher for the Washington Nationals. They're not complete scrubs, even if the guys you face in the middle in Mitchell Parker and the other guy whose name is escaping me that you faced in Washington, even though they're not good. It hasn't been nobody's. I don't know. I'm trying to piece this together of why the Philadelphia Phillies all of a sudden they see a bullpen and they murder them. And I think part of it is you're playing the Nationals and the Rockies. So this is where we switch from don't worry about it, it's 4 games, to it's a little concerning. Now, you're going to get the ultimate measuring stick games this coming weekend once this Rocky series ends because the Dodgers come to town. It may get rained out a couple of games. I hope they get them in. Well, I actually don't, and we'll talk about that more in a later episode this week, why it would be better for the Phillies to get rained out against the Dodgers because it complicates the Dodgers schedule and it gives them more time. That's the base idea there. But when you're playing a game like the Dodgers, like the Mets, like the Yankees, like the Braves, like these top teams in baseball, Padres, Diamondbacks, whatever, Orioles, you know who the top teams in baseball are. You can't just spend 6 innings doing nothing. You can't just sit on the bench for 3/4 of the game and then all of a sudden decide that you're going to come out and hit because, listen, one of those last 2 innings, if you're facing the Mets, is Edwin Diaz. He's pretty damn good. Other teams like the Dodgers, they have a really good bullpen. The Braves, their bullpen needs work, but they have a couple of good arms they can round out games with. You can't make a habit of not getting to starters And slow starts also brings out the angst in the fan base. And I've got to deal with all those tweets about how this is the worst team alive for the first 6 innings before everybody's happy when they win. So why are the Phillies not hitting starting pitching? Long story short, I don't really know yet. But those are some of the contributing factors we just ran through. That's kind of why I'm worried about it. But also, it's very cool that the Phillies don't panic, right? That's the upside, is that when they get in those moments where it's like it's 1-0 late to a team you should beat, they're like, okay, we're just going to go hang 6 on them in the final 2 at-bats, and we're going to have a nice, comfortable win. And I make that sound more easy than it is for the players. But the upside is the team fights. The team never panics. The team trusts their approach, which is something we have not seen from them in previous years. The downside is you got to get going early against better teams. You can only get away with this against the Rockies and Nationals and teams like that. It's 4 games, which is not a nothing sample size, and not all those pitchers are great, even though some of them were. So your guess is as good as mine, whether or not this will continue. We will see what the Philadelphia Phillies do tomorrow when they resume their series against the Colorado Rockies. Seems like the weather is fine for the rest of the Rockies series, so we'll preview tomorrow's game. My big focus, I'll tell you right now, is going to be, can the Phillies get going early? But we got some good news on the injury front yesterday, and it revealed some changes for Rob Thomson. And I think we've been seeing this already this year. So in the home opener win yesterday, in which, by the way, great job by the Phillies putting together all the bells and whistles of the home opener. The new LED display looks awesome. The Saquon Barkley, Brandon Graham first pitch was great. The players walking in from the outfield was awesome, as it always was. The division-winning flag, the pennant out there for the NL East, hanging up was that was beautiful to see. Awesome day at the ballpark yesterday. 10 out of 10 work by the Philadelphia Phillies. They always nail it. But home game 2 is not as exciting. It could be, though, if the Phillies get to the starters. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a change, or a couple of changes that Rob Thomson has made in his managing of the team over the first 4 games of the season. I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he's done, and we will see if it holds up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel first, because March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. So, a lot of people like Cinderellas. Well, Cinderella didn't show up to the dance this year, or the ball. I forget what she went to. Bottom line is, Final Four is all 1 seeds, folks. So that means 2 things. 1, if you bet a lot of underdogs early, you got some making up to do. But 2, if you want to watch exciting basketball, you've got 4 of the best teams we've seen in the last decade of college hoops all in the same Final Four. It's going to be awesome. Duke, Houston, Auburn, Florida, they're all hanging out. Make your pick. Who's cutting down the nets? Who's going to play in the national championship game? Maybe unders on the games, because all those teams are going to play tightly contested, tough games. Who knows what you like, but there's going to be some great basketball in the tournament. So go ahead and check it out. The best part is the FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. So if you bet on one Final Four game, you get your winnings in time for the next one. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel.com. All right, so what is Rob Thomson doing so differently? You might say, Connor, it's only 4 games. You're defending your guy. And, well, Rob Thompson's a defendable character in this era of Philadelphia Phillies baseball, in my mind. First, let me just tell you about Rob Thomson real quick before we get into the change that he made, or the changes that he's made in his managerial style or philosophy so far this year. You know who Rob Thomson is? He gets a lot of hate from the fan base. And I don't think it's for him personally. I think when everything's all said and done, if people saw Rob Thomson on the street, he's a very likable guy. I think he is a well-liked guy in this city when it comes to his personality and who he is. I think people are just annoyed that he hasn't gotten this team to realize their potential of winning a championship. But Rob Thomson, I don't know if any of you guys are racing fans. I'm really not, so this may not make any sense. But the Daytona 500, I believe, is 500 laps. It's a car race. And Rob Thomson is like a driver in a Daytona 500 that drives 450 laps as the leader or one of the top 2 cars. And he does everything right. Maybe once or twice, he pits a lap early or something like that. I don't know if that's a big deal or if that's long, whatever. But he does everything right for 450 laps. And then from lap 450 in at some point, one of his tires blows off. And it's not like he hit something that he could have avoided. It's not like he did something to cause it. His tire just explodes. And he's left there sitting on the track and they lose. That would be like faulting that guy. How is that his fault? How is it his problem? I mean, I get it. He's the driver. You can't blame the car because the car is not a sentient being. But bottom line is he doesn't win the Daytona 500 and looks like he never had a chance to begin with. That's what Rob Thomson has had to deal with when he's taken over the team midseason, managed them, went to the World Series. Next year, taking this team, slow start, fixed everything midseason, they go to the NLCS. The year after, win the division, 95 games, make it to the postseason for the third straight time. Like, he has done a great job as a manager. And then when his guys don't hit, that's the equivalent of a tire blowing out. What do you want him to do? Like, go down to the cage and scream at Bryce Harper, scream at Castellanos, Schwarber, Bohm, Romuto, like all of these guys until they hit? Like, either they're going to hit or they're not. They're pro baseball players. So I think he gets too much crap sometimes for the failures of his hitters. Not saying he's perfect, but saying that he seems to be a lightning rod figure for the fan base, and I don't know that he deserves to be based on what he's done in this town as the manager of the Phillies. But that's just one man's opinion. On top of that, the things that he needs to do better exist. I'm not telling you he's the perfect manager. All right? So things that we've looked at this year for Rob Thomson to correct has been the way that he's handled the lineup, the way that he's handled the bullpen, maybe being more aggressive in spots, maybe being more critical of players in spots, maybe trying more new things, maybe being more continuity based than others. It's this weird laundry list of things that's like, I can't see Rob Thomson do this. I can't see Rob Thomson do that. And I'm not saying you're wrong for expecting these things. I'm just saying they feel kind of nitpicky at points, and you get the right to nitpick this team because they're so damn good. And the difference between winning the World Series and losing in the NLCS is minuscule. In 23, it was one home game, a couple of runs here or there. So that's why you have the absolute right to nitpick, and I'm not blaming anybody for doing this. Like, I'm on your side with this one. But Rob Thomson has done some things so far this year that I don't think he would have done in previous years. We wanted change with the lineup, right? We wanted to see Trey Turner at the leadoff spot. We wanted to see Kyle Schwarber at cleanup. Well, day one of the season, you know what Rob Thomson gave you? He gave you Trey Turner at the leadoff spot. He gave you Kyle Schwarber as cleanup. Now, Schwarber's led off the subsequent 3 games, and part of that is because of Trey Turner's injury to his back. Trey Turner dealing with back spasms. So what do you want him to do? Start Trey Turner to keep the leadoff spot rotating even though he's hurt? Like, that's insane over the lineup. And a lineup that works, by the way. Kyle Schwarber batting leadoff does not hurt this team. Some people just want to see a different lineup, and Rob Thomson has provided that when possible through 4 games this year. So that's a credit to him for switching up his philosophy. Did I say philosophy? I think I combined philosophy and velocity. Philosophy. Another thing he's done. He was a really solid, like, this is what we're going to do every day guy when he took over from Joe Girardi. And he's kind of remained that guy during his time as Phillies manager. He doesn't like to switch things up. He doesn't really panic. He trusts his guys. Well, this year, he's flip-flopping lineups all over the place, right? Based on handedness. That shows willing to be flexible when in previous times he was very rigid with how he wanted to build the lineup. I don't know if that's him. I don't know if that's Dave Dombrowski and the organization saying, hey, we need to do this differently. So he's under a mandate. But bottom line is, even the idea of having Turner bat leadoff one day, Schwarber bat leadoff the next, and flipping that based on handedness is very anti what Rob Thomson would have previously done. So that's a good sign that he's trying something different. Like, a lot of Phillies fans, myself included, believe they have the answer. Nobody has the answer. Like, nobody knows what's going on with this team, why they don't cash in when it matters. We know, they don't hit, but we don't know what the deeper reasoning behind that is, why they don't hit. We don't know the fix. Kevin Long doesn't know it. Rob Thomson doesn't know it. Dave Dombrowski doesn't know it. Johnny from South Philly doesn't know it. So they're trying different things, and that's the only way you can figure this out is kind of like a person who doesn't understand a Rubik's Cube. You just start switching panels until something makes sense. And that's what the Phillies are doing right now. And credit to Rob Thomson for being willing to do that. And the other thing that he did yesterday that showed that we're seeing a different, more aggressive Rob Thomson, because so far I think what we're talking about there is a more aggressive focus on, hey, we're going to do whatever it takes to win. Yesterday, Trey Turner was not in the starting lineup with back spasms. He had missed the final 2 games of Washington. There was a question as to whether or not he'd be available for the home opener against the Rockies, and he was not out there. Edmundo Sosa started at shortstop. Well, then in a big spot in the 7th inning, not in Edmundo Sosa's spot, but right before Edmundo Sosa's spot, Trey Turner comes out of the dugout to pinch hit. In previous years, we've seen a guy with a nagging injury, we'd rather get him the whole day. Off day tomorrow, don't care. Our plan was to have him down. He's going to be down. That was a Rob Thomson staple. And he said, screw that. We have to beat the Colorado Rockies. I have a runner on base. I want Trey Turner to get up there and get a hit. Now, Turner walked, and then Sosa doubled after. So it did set up 2 runs to give them the lead rather than just having no opportunity, because I believe Turner hit with 2 outs in the 7th inning. But it was very anti-previous statements or previous philosophies by Rob Thomson to take a guy who had back spasms this early in the season and say, yo, I need 1 at bat out of you. I need you to run the bases once. And that's all he did, because he pinch hit for Brandon Marsh. So another thing that Rob Thomson never does is he never pinch hits a guy for another guy at a different position and then makes a defensive replacement after the at bat. It's always Sosa pinch hitting for Stott, and then Sosa plays second. Rojas pinch hitting for Marsh, and then Rojas plays center. Like yesterday, he pinch hit Trey Turner for Brandon Marsh, who was playing center field, then put in Yohan Rojas out there. It was just very atypical of what Rob Thomson does. And guess what? It was a huge reason why they found a way to win the game. Could you imagine if they had pinch hit Trey Turner for Edmundo Sosa? 1, he might not have gotten up. 2, Sosa had the 2 RBI double. Rob Thompson's changing things. He is making alterations to the way he manages. I have not seen enough credit to Rob Thomson through 4 games. Maybe part of that is because it is 4 games. But at the same time, the guy's trying things differently, and he deserves credit for changing up some of his philosophies so far. We'll see if they continue over the course of 158 more games or 57 more games. But credit to him so far. He is doing things differently, and that is good to see that he's being flexible in a huge year for the Philadelphia Phillies. Coming up next, we're going to take an early peek in since it is an off day. If you know Locked On Phillies, you know in the past I like to check the standings on off days. We're going to take a peek at the NL East, and not just the standings. Jurickson Profar, ooh, you're in trouble. We'll talk about it coming up next as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk about SupplyHouse. You got to get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's SupplyHouse. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, SupplyHouse is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you're going to find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. I mean, maybe you need help with an order. That happens every once in a while, right? You need a little customer service. Well, SupplyHouse offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you're always going to talk to a real person. And for trade pros that are looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. I mean, thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. What are you waiting for? Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM. T is in trade, M is in master, and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, you use promo code SH5, that's S is in supply, H is in house, 5 is in the number 5. You'll get 5% off your first order. They got a lot of perks. They got a lot of great business to do with you. That's why you got to check out supplyhouse.com. All right, let's take a look at the NL East because we are 4 games into the season for the Philadelphia Phillies. Some teams a little bit more. But when you look at the division standings, there's one team up on top, and that is your Fightin' Phils. They are 3-1. Now, they've started off the season against the Nationals and the Rockies. So you shouldn't be surprised they are 3-1, but they are also leading the division in runs scored. They are one of 2 teams in the division that has a positive run differential. They're +10. The Mets are +5. And the Phillies are the only team that is undefeated at home. Well, fun fact, even though the Mets and the Braves have not played a home game yet. Now, we'll run down the standings real quick. It is very early, but the Phillies are 3-1. The Marlins are actually 3-2. The Mets 2-2, 500. The Nationals 1-3. And this is where I really wanted to get to. Phillies fans, you could not have dreamed a better start to the season when it comes to a divisional hatred of the Braves, right? We have our rivals. And while we hate the Mets, we do. The Braves have been more of the recent rival, right? The Mets obviously put themselves back into that conversation last year. The Mets have pitching issues. They're not hitting the ball at all right now. They've had a very slow start to the year offensively. The Marlins are not playing good competition. So you don't really have to worry about the Marlins. They've just kind of gotten off to an interesting start. But the Braves are that team that was predicted to win the division, that was predicted to have the most wins on the season, and they have taken some major losses. Now, they started their season with 4 games against the San Diego Padres. Lost all 4 of them. Now they're facing the Dodgers in LA. That's a mess. They lost the opener to the Dodgers. They could very well get swept by that team before they ever play a home game. Oh, and by the way, their home opening series is against the Philadelphia Phillies coming up. Or no, it's not. It's against somebody else. I just lied to you right there. The Phillies play them next week. So the hope is the Braves are still struggling when the Phillies go down to Atlanta on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They may actually have next Monday off anyway. But the Phils are going to get an opportunity against a struggling Braves team. They have not had Spencer Strider back yet. They have not had Ronald Acuna Jr. back yet. They do not have Sean Murphy back yet, who was injured in spring training. And the biggest news in the NL East right now is not that the Phillies are 3-2 and leading things. It's that the Braves went out this offseason, and their big signing, because they don't have a lot of money, because they're in the middle of some weird TV dispute deal or something down there. So they don't have a lot of money to spend right now. That's why it's great that they got all the contracts done that they did from their perspective. But they signed Jurickson Profar to play the outfield for them. And yesterday, Profar gets banged for a banned substance, 80-game suspension. He is ineligible for the postseason now. The Atlanta Braves, 5 games into the season, have lost all 5 of those games, and one of their starting outfielders, their big offseason acquisition, not just for 80 games, a huge chunk of the season, because then he'll come back. But he can't play in the postseason anymore. So if the Phillies have to face them in a divisional series, no Jurickson Profar, they're going to have to figure something out in free agency or at the deadline to go find an outfielder. And I'll tell you right now, there isn't going to be somebody that they can sign that's Jurickson Profar's level, and they're probably not going to be able to trade for someone that's Jurickson Profar's level. So that's a major, major blow for the Braves. I think they are having legitimately the worst start to a season in baseball so far based on expectations. The Twins got smacked by the White Sox yesterday, so Twins fans are probably not feeling pretty good. But if the Braves are your biggest worry in the division, starting off in a good spot. And this also shows you why, you have to take advantage of these games against the Rockies. You had to win the series in Washington. You got to win 2 or 3 of these games because you're about to play the Dodgers coming up later this week, weather depending. And if you lose 2 of 3 in that series, you want to have a little bit of a buffer over teams in the division. I don't really start caring about divisional standings until you're probably, 40 games in, 50 games in. So we got a ways to go before you actually start saying, oh, who's where in the division? It's early. It's the guys batting 700 right now or 580 or something, like Aaron Judge is up in New York. Speaking of, tomorrow, we're going to tackle, after previewing Game 2 of Phillies Rockies, the torpedo bats conversation. I almost did it today, but I wanted to save it for tomorrow because the early peek at the NL East was a little bit more timely. But when you look at it and you say, okay, there are guys pacing to hit over 500, it's early in the season still. It's just good to see the Phillies get a jump because Braves were projected 93 wins, Phillies and Mets both 90 wins. It's going to be a tight divisional race. Every little slip up could make a major difference. Almost, I don't know what I was thinking, defense. Difference when it comes to late September, early October, and the division standings. So a great start to the season for the Phils. Some changes from Rob Thomson and his philosophy. The Phils are killing bullpens. I don't know what it is about relief pitchers. Maybe they just have faced two bullpens that stink so far in the Nationals and Rockies. But time will tell if that's going to be a trend. There are upsides and there are downsides of that trend. But the number one upside of the Philly season is guys are coming back being healthy. Real Muto played yesterday, by the way. Turner pinch hit. He was good to go. He's going to be able to play again tomorrow. They're getting healthy. They're winning ball games. Things are good for the Philadelphia Phillies right now. Just got to get to a starter. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Tomorrow, we're going to take a peek at Game 2 of the series with the Colorado Rockies, the Torpedo Bats conversation, a whole bunch of other stuff from the first 4 games of the Philadelphia Phillies schedule so far in 2025. So a lot more to get into as the Phils go back into action tomorrow. But thank you so much for joining us today. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff. I appreciate everyone who's done that, everyone who's going to do that, and I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.